Welcome to Reasonable Arguments, News and Nonsense. This is our first podcast together. I'm Jennifer Bash, and I'm here with my husband, Jamie Miller. I guess the fun part of us is that Jamie is a political expert for over 30 years, and I hate politics. So I've just recently started to like them when I started treating it like a reality TV show. That kind of helps a little bit. But so we're going to be here. We're going to talk about news stories, political news stories, and things like that. But then we're going to add a little fun to it because who wants to talk about politics all the time, right? So let's start off. Are you ready?
It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody loves it as much as we do.
We'll see. We don't know if we love it yet, right? It's our first one. Not live.
We did the 4 hours of election night coverage live, reasonable arguments, election night coverage November 5th. So we had an exciting time.
Yes, we decided
eight episodes.
Yes, went live for 4 hours.
That was our first one. So this should be a piece of cake.
A piece of cake, and that was video. So people were actually watching us, where now we don't have to be seen, thank God, because my hair is horrible right now. But so the first thing that I wanted to talk about, because watching this political thing and just a little backstory for me. So I never registered to vote until I was 45 years old. And I did vote for Trump. I registered independent and I voted for Trump. And
in 2016.
In 2016. And now everybody knows my age, I guess. So, but that's okay. So,
well, it's right there in your email address, babe. I hate to tell you that.
Oh, that's true, right? Right. Okay. So, and the reason that is because I grew up in a very political town. Politics were something that was evil, I guess, to me. My family never talked about it. It wasn't anything that I knew about. So I claimed ignorance to the whole thing and kind of just ignored it until Hillary Clinton came around and was running for president, and I literally could not stand watching that woman talk and in her suits, and she was standing up there and just saying literally all of the polished words that just, in my mind were like, you're playing this role. Like you were born and bred for this role. And now you're here and you're just saying all the pretty words, which annoyed me. And being a Pittsburgh girl when, with Trump, yes, he's bold and out there and, says it how it is, which I know rubs people the wrong way. But to me, I would rather be told harshly and to the point than to be sugar-coated and cited later.
I like to say that people voted for Trump because he leads us through fire, and people voted for him despite the fires he sets.
True. True. So going into this election was very different for me because of obviously being married to you now and seeing different sides of it. So just a backstory on Jamie, he started the Reasonable Arguments base, I guess, in doing a blog. How many years ago now?
Right at about 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So
moved it over to Substack this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And have been pretty successful with it at Substack, growing subscribers. I think there's more than 2,000 subscribers now.
That's awesome.
So,
but the one thing that I really appreciated with Jamie, and I think a lot of people do, is that he really does, even though he is a Republican, he really does show the both sides of the topics that you talk about. And that to me helps me understand because he's not throwing the Republican Party down my throat. It's not, it's this way or, no way. It's not that. It's teaching. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate the most. And I think that's one of the things that bringing into this podcast that we're going to teach people. I think we're going to help people like me who aren't into politics maybe feel a little better, understand more, and, just bringing the topics to life that maybe people aren't talking the way that you would necessarily.
There's 360 degrees of viewing an elephant. If somebody's describing the trunk, they're going to have a completely different description than somebody who's looking at the tail. And I try to look at both conventional wisdom when it comes to politics, and then sometimes add a little unconventional wisdom to the conversation as well. So,
yeah.
not necessarily everything I say is something I advocate, but we try to stir the conversation.
Right.
Right. So,
Right. So, okay, so let's dive into today's episode. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because I truly did go into this election wanting to give Kamala Harris the benefit of the doubt. Like, I really, truly went into it waiting to hear something from her that made me feel comfortable believing that she could, number one, run our country, protect us Americans, and make a difference. And unfortunately, I never heard that. There was nothing that came about that made me think, wow, she really could truly be a great candidate.
well, she never made the sale to the American people. I've run campaigns from a rural hospital bond for an emergency room to being a senior advisor on a presidential campaign. And regardless of what you're running for, you have to tell people who you are, why you're running, and what you're going to do if you win. And she didn't do any of those three things.
No.
And I think that was part of her failure. Now, on the other side, Trump's team ran a great campaign. You start, the maneuvering of the optics of him working the drive-through window at McDonald's. That became, kind of a flashpoint for Halloween costumes. And then also when Joe Biden called Trump supporters garbage, and then he's driving he's riding in a garbage truck. So, yes, he has that political flair and took advantage of every single advantage that Harris gave him.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we saw with Trump that we did not see with Harris was that he talked to the people. She's out there doing these concerts and these, paying all these celebrities for endorsements and all of these things, which to me, would never resonate to me. I don't, I'm not a starstruck person. So if I see a celebrity in a restaurant, I'm not going up to them and asking them for their autograph. That's just not who I am. So I know there's a lot of people that are and would be like, oh, okay, well, this person is voting for Kamala Harris, so no, I need to because of that. So, but I will say we do have some Democrats in the family, and we absolutely respect their opinions and their thoughts. But I think one of the things that we are seeing is fear in younger voters of what could possibly happen to them during Trump's presidency. And with that being said, were they too young during his original presidency to really see the benefits that happened or anything like that? So I have some things that...
Yeah, a couple of things. One, if you're around 30 or 35 years old, you've only had 3 years as an adult of a great American economy. And those are the first 3 years in Trump's first term. And, secondly, Democrats haven't had a legitimate Democratic primary since 2008. So in 2028, they're going to have their first real primary, hopefully, in 20 years. And so, Barack Obama won in a fair primary in 2008. Of course, an incumbent president usually gets the benefit of the doubt and doesn't have a primary in 2012. 2016, they cooked the books for Hillary over Bernie Sanders. And in 2020, they cooked the books for Harris over Joe Biden. And so the Democratic Party has some real issues on their side as far as just having free, fair, and transparent elections just to get a nominee. Now we see things like, here we are December 1st, and they're still counting votes in California.
Yeah.
Almost a full month after the election. And, I've suggested that if you are from a state, there's not much the federal government can do to stop, to dictate state election law. But one thing that can happen is that Republicans in the House and the Senate could refuse to seat the entire delegation from a state that does not handle their elections in free, fair, and transparent manner. And there's no way anybody can convince me that counting votes 30 days after the election is free, fair, and transparent. It's completely the opposite of free, fair, and transparent elections. And there should be some mechanism that we should be able to look at these Democrat states that are taking, they wait till there was 200 votes came in for a Democrat member of Congress, today. And, and that lead is for the Democrat of about 280 votes. So, you just can't convince me that they're running a free, fair, and transparent election in California when it takes that long to
Well, I
count the
think
votes.
I think one of the things is I don't think every state should be held to the same rules on how the voting happens when the deadline is that everything has to be in. And I don't think there should be anything put out on the news of anything that's happening until all the results are in, because it's leaving too much up for interpretation of what everything's going on and is it really real.
Yeah.
So we could get into the voting thing, and I'm sure that probably will be an episode one day. But I really do want to dive into these things that Democrats are that I've heard.
This episode is doom and gloom of Democrats,
It's
right?
not. No, I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think it's legitimate fear and of what's going to happen.
Well, every election day, election morning, I put on Facebook or social media, and it reads something like, despite who wins this election, we as Americans collectively are stronger than the person we are electing. And so anybody who is out there who thinks, oh, Donald Trump is, the second coming of the devil, can then take solace in the fact that should he go too far off the reservation, that we collectively can bring them back on. And that's quite frankly what happened to Joe Biden and Harris, is that Democrats went too far. They went too far with DEI programs, too far with boys and girls restrooms, boys and girls sports, and men and women's prisons, went too far with open border policy, went too far with things like energy policy and mandating electric vehicles, just all of these things that they went too far on in American people. The lawfare, having two impeachments of a political opponent, one based completely on false information, and the other having no evidence at all. And the U.S. House impeached this president twice. They then tried him and had him convicted. And I really believe the American people said, you know what, we're the jury. We are the ones who get to decide. And we believe that these were political prosecutions. And we voted Donald Trump not guilty. And we reelected him president. And so, I think that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, because they bought into this narrative of how horrible Donald Trump is. They bought into this narrative of, in the last 8 days of the election, they called the man Hitler, called his supporters garbage, called women who supported Donald Trump weak and narrow-minded. So these were either Harris, Biden, or official surrogates of the campaign. So, and then the last weekend, they tried to say, hey, we're going to unite the country somehow after we called half the population, all these names. And so people turned their back on that and said, Democrats, you went too far. What's the question?
Yeah.
I know you have some questions, but
yeah. I've only said that 5 times now, and one thing you will learn about my husband is he loves to talk, and he's normally good at it, but we have to sometimes pull him in a little bit to rein him in so we can get our questions in. So, okay. So some of the things that I've heard Democrats say that they are concerned about is the erosion of democracy. Why is this a fear, and what has Donald Trump shown to this point that would make people think this would happen?
I think just the opposite happened. We had this great moment in democracy where, there's no question that Barack Obama weaponized the IRS. That's a proven fact that if you were conservative, you had a higher likelihood of being audited. Then Joe Biden weaponized the FBI. So I think what happened in this election was democracy saying we don't want these things to happen anymore. And so I don't understand the claim, but I know that people are out there saying it, but I think it's unfounded.
Okay. The next one is obviously destruction of human rights. So I think this goes to the abortion ban and everything about that.
Yeah, so I think one thing we have to come to grips with and be intellectually honest with each other about when we're discussing these things is, when you start talking about human rights apply to every human on the planet. The right not to be enslaved, the right not to be sex trafficked, the right, to breathe and live a free life, right? So those are human rights. Then Americans have this special set of rights called constitutional rights, and they don't apply to everybody. You don't have a constitutional right to, let's say, petition our government, or a constitutional right to own a gun just because you're here visiting, or because you're here illegally. And so those constitutional rights are specific to American citizens. And, so Donald Trump isn't going to trample on human rights. I know that people are concerned about the abortion issue. And quite frankly, the Roe decision was a restriction on a state's ability to restrict abortions. And so now the Dodd decision has kind of given that right back to the states, where, so I know a lot of people see that as an erosion of women's rights, but it's really a gaining of rights protected under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which is the right of states to have rights. And so we have to remember that as well.
Okay. The next one is labor rights. What is the issue that they're thinking with that?
Well, here, Democrats as a general rule want to have organized labor. They want mandated union dues. And Republicans believe in a right to work. And you have the right to work without having to join a union. That's the law of the land here in Florida, for instance. There's some states where if you're in a union shop, you have to pay union dues, whether you agree with the union or not. And, to me, it's a basic freedom just of someone working. If you're working and you want to join a union, by all means do so. Unionize, have your union, have collective bargaining. But if you choose not to pay union dues, and a lot of that comes down to political activity, that people disagreed with the political activity of unions. And so they wanted to quit being forced to finance political activity with which they disagreed. And so I think you're going to see more. Most of these are in the states, right to work type issues versus the federal government. But quite frankly, I think that's a positive thing.
The next one we see is increased tariffs.
So, I think what Donald Trump is going to do is look at people who trade unfairly with the United States and get them in line one way or the other. Either start trading fairly, or we're going to start taxing your goods, right? So China is not a fair trading partner with the United States. If you have something you want to sell in China, they tax the heck out of you. It's not possible to sell,
like Ford.
Ford is not, prevalent in China because they can't. The tariffs are too high, and yet they want to sell their electric vehicles here with no tariffs. So I think you're going to see tariffs when you have people at the negotiation table who are negotiating either in bad faith or just have unfair trade practices.
Is this something that he did during the 2016?
I'd have to go research that. I know that it wasn't. I don't recall that it was that as big an issue. I think he threatened it, and brought people. His goal was to bring more manufacturing and more jobs. And until COVID, every demographic in the United States was thriving. Lower unemployment, higher employment rates, and that's kind of a different way to look at things, is employment rates versus unemployment rates, because once people quit looking for a job, they're no longer counted as, quote, unemployed. So, or they're no longer receiving unemployment benefits. They're no longer counted as unemployed, even though they may not be working. But people were employed at a higher rate in nearly every demographic under Donald Trump's first term. So, I think you'll see more of that. You'll see him try to take bureaucracy out of business and allow businesses to thrive.
A lot of people are saying that they're preparing for a revenge-driven governance, and, there's going to be more violence. There's going to be things like that. And, the first thing that comes to my mind is Black Lives Matter, and that all, everything that went down with the cities burning and the defunding of the police. And I don't know how Democrats could think that. I mean, that was horrible, and that was under their administration. So.
I wrote about this in my blog, and it is pretty incredible that, things like student protests throughout since about 1960 have occurred mostly in presidential election years, right? And so these things they're orchestrated, they're financed by very rich people, and and they're meant to be. They try to make them appear organic when they are in fact not. There is some organic. Some people join these movements from an organic way, but there's people getting paid to quote community organize, which is Barack Obama's one and only job before being elected to office was a community
I remember
organizer.
you saying when we were watching some of the Black Lives Matter protest, which it's actually not funny now, but interesting, is that you said, look at all the signs. All the signs in these protests are so very similar. And I wonder who the company is that's
printing them.
providing them.
Yeah. So, the thing with Black Lives Matter is, the Democrats like to talk about January 6th and, kind of this mob that went wild in the Capitol for 4 hours, right? Black Lives Matter lasted a couple weeks. And what they like to say is, fewer than 10% of them of these protests were violent. Violence being someone being physically hurt, damage to buildings, or people being arrested, right? So only 10%. Well, there were 5,000 Black Lives Matter protests, more than 500 protests during the Black Lives Matter movement were violent. We had 100 cities simultaneously on fire. Minneapolis, Minnesota lost over 300 buildings to fire. And so that was real orchestrated violence for political gain. And so it's Democrats looking in the mirror saying, we don't want Republicans to use government against us because we've been doing it to Republicans for decades now. And we're the ones who protest violently to get a political end, have the means meet the political end. So, I think they're just projecting what they have been doing onto this new administration.
Okay, our next one is that he will become a dictator. This one kind of makes me laugh. I mean, we went through 4 years with him in office already. No, I don't even think that was. I don't remember that being a concern.
They impeached the president for quote his activities on January 6th, which I'm not sure how Nancy Pelosi got to that impeachment, but she did. It was a political impeachment. We all know that, and and even after. And they claimed for 4 years we didn't have a peaceful transfer of power, which is not true. We did have a peaceful transfer of power. And of all the crazy things they've accused of Donald Trump, no one ever has accused him of making a phone call to a general or an admiral or the Pentagon to roll tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue to keep himself in the presidency. Nobody's even accused him of it. Mm-hmm. So, this whole line of a dictatorship is bogus. It's Democrats trying to hamstring the administration. They're trying to pressure the Senate, into denying some of his nominations so that they can get, quite frankly, more liberal people, appointed and people who are from DC appointed. They don't like the fact that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are leading an office of government efficiency, the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. And it scares them to death that one of those things is we're going to try to push a bill through Congress to eliminate the compliance Department of Education, that wasn't even around until 1980. And they make it sound like it's this institution that the federal government can't live without. Well, the federal government lived 200 years without a Department of Education. So, we certainly need to put those types of things back in the states and stop this federal government pushing these compliance rules like these DEI rules. And that was one of the things I think with this election is people, they think of diversity laws. We used to call it affirmative action, right? Now it's, diversity, at DEI. And so we're, the problem with that is it's supposed to protect a minority of the population, right? But what ends up happening, and it has happened, is that it applies to 100% of jobs. So you end up with 30% of the population getting all the promotions. And so people are like, whoa, like I work hard, I deserve a promotion. Why am I losing out simply because I'm in the majority? And that makes no sense. And I've claimed one of the first letters to the editor I wrote when I was in high school was, we're going to have racism in this country until our federal government stops asking us about our race. The federal government has no need to know your race, not to get benefits, not to get scholarships, not for anything. And so why would, and until we demand that our federal government quits using race to divide us, we're going to continue to have these problems.
Okay. The last one that I have for this is the end of gay marriage, which I kind of find funny because it was instated in 2015 and we went through 4 years with Trump. And I mean, is this even anything that's on his radar? And,
Yeah.
and what is the point to fight it?
I've always said that the gay marriage movement would have been better off if they had made their issues about end of life issues instead of about this word marriage, because the government's responsibility with any marriage is to reallocate assets and take care of children during divorce. That's the only reason that government should be involved with marriage. So if two people decide, hey, we're going to collectively have our assets and we're going to join together in marriage or a lifetime commitment with each other, and the government shouldn't be involved with that at all. I think Donald Trump, the one thing that he did this campaign that he did not do in his first 4 years, I like to say that he practiced the politics of addition. And so he's appointed somebody who's gay into top 20 positions into his cabinet. He's brought in people like Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he said, hey, listen, if you want to be part of the team, I'm going to open up the doors and we're going to have a big tent Republican Party. We've heard about that for years and years, but Donald Trump actually applied that philosophy to this election. And I can't imagine that he would now practice the politics of subtraction by making gay marriage the tip of the spear of what he wants to do. I mean, I'd rather see him work on conservative issues like, hey, let's, have our tax dollars follow children instead of, big school administrations, So I don't think you'll see that. I certainly hope that's not at the forefront of his policies.
Okay. So this is a question that I thought of that I did not give you time to think about it, so you don't have to answer it right now. But if a new law was passed requiring everyone to work one specific job for a year, what job would you choose for society and why? And you don't have to answer it now because I did not.
What job would I choose for me?
No, if a new law was passed requiring everyone to work one specific job for a year, what job would you choose for society? And
that everybody has to do at least once. That's an interesting question.
And you don't have to answer it now. Like I said, I didn't give you any time. So
I think something. Public facing.
So we should probably preface our podcast that we are doing it from one of our spare bedrooms in our home, and we have pets. So you just heard Nugget sneezing. He's sitting on my shoulder right now. So we're not the most polished podcast, but this is reality for us. So okay, good.
So I don't know the answer. I'm not sure if I do have the answer for that.
Think about it. We'll do it. We'll answer that on the next podcast.
That sounds great.
Okay. So thank you for answering those questions. I appreciate it. I don't know if they were good.
So I have a question for you now. So if you could wave a magic wand and create a law, what would the law be?
Well, it's probably already been done, is the cruelty to animals. Anybody who is caught hurting an animal in any way is a felony. I think for sure. That's definitely one. But let me think about that and I will answer on our next podcast.
Yeah, I've got one.
Oh, you do? Oh, I'm sorry. What law would you?
Well, this is something else I've wanted to do for a long time, is have the IRS send citizens a bill and you only have to file a tax return if you disagree with your bill. And so the onus would be back on the government instead of putting the responsibility on a taxpayer, because I just think that it's wrong that we are in a system where if I make a mistake on my taxes, I can be fined or go to jail by my government, when the government pretty much knows or has an idea of what I should be paying in taxes.
Well, they should.
So
I mean,
so send me a bill.
anybody who's getting a W-2 or
Yeah, so send me a bill, and then if I disagree with the bill, then
no more filing taxes.
No, you could file taxes if you disagree with your bill.
Disagree. How would that work for self-employed companies?
Well, I think, you have different levels, right? So, but the vast majority of taxpayers are W-2 employees, right?
Yeah.
So you take 70%. We just, Joe Biden just hired 80,000 tax agents. 86,000 tax agents. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's just completely absurd that we're growing that particular department. We should be reducing that particular department. And we should be doing it through efficiencies like, I don't know, AI, right? Like there has to be some level of a program where they know, despite us having a business together, they know how much money goes into our bank accounts. They know, kind of what we've paid in taxes in the past. And my guess is the government could guess pretty close. I guess probably within a couple $100 of what we owe in taxes.
Isn't it kind of like an oxymoron that they hire 86,000 IRS people to review tax stuff, but yet they have let immigrants in that aren't legal? We're not even going to get into that. Just kind of a little thing I wanted to throw out there.
Well, so we've come up with 2 more episodes, so there's never going to be a shortage of things to talk about here, and I'm really looking forward to doing this with you. And
we're not done. I still have my nonsense segment. Look, you're already trying to take over this podcast with politics only. That's not how this is going to work.
Okay, so now we're doing nonsense.
Now we are doing fun stuff.
Okay.
We're doing interesting stuff that doesn't have to do with politics. Okay?
I can't wait. Babe, what is it?
All right. So, I don't know if you've heard this story, but in Los Angeles, 4 residents were arrested for insurance fraud, looking for of nearly $142,000. Okay. The group made a claim that while they were in the San Bernardino Mountains, that a bear entered their Rolls Royce, therefore scratching the door, entering the car, and going in and destroying the inside. And they have photos and they have video that they took, sent it into the insurance company. So the insurance company, of course, reviewing, bears aren't uncommon in California. This happens. They get into homes, whatever. But, the people send in the videos, they send in the pictures. So the insurance company's looking at it, looking at these videos and thinking, in the video, I watched the video, and the video is kind of like half of the car. So you can't really see the door opening or the bear getting into the car, but you can kind of see the bear rummaging through the car. And
so they have video of a bear inside the car.
They have a video of a bear inside the car, not getting into the car.
Okay.
So the insurance company is reviewing this video and thinking that bear's not moving around like a typical bear, right?
A trained bear?
So they come to the conclusion that it is someone dressed in a bear costume. That's what they concluded. So they turned it over to the police. The detectives then, they start investigating, and they find that there are 2 more insurance claims to 2 other companies on a Mercedes for each company. There's 2 more cars, each Mercedes, to the insurance company. Similar photos, similar videos. So they send these videos to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to have them review them. And they're like, no, this is not a bear. Like, this is truly someone dressed in a bear costume. So they executed a search warrant, went into the house, and lo and behold, they find the bear costume. So now these 4 are arrested for Operation Bear Claw, which it was dubbed, and now they're in jail. I haven't seen if they've hired an attorney or what's going to happen. I'm curious as to what's going to happen with these 4, but
that is so
how
fantastic.
Unbearably stupid.
Oh, gosh. Well, I was telling you earlier, kind of like the the new scan with QR codes. Like if you go scan like your parking at like a public parking lot, that the QR code might be fake.
Yeah.
Because scammers are now, and it looks exactly like a Park Mobile app or whatever parking app, they're trying to mimic, and they capture your credit card and your information and your login information, and with these fake QR codes that they're just putting over the real ones.
I don't, I'm a little upset that you took away from my bear pun when I said how unbearably
I
stupid.
laughed.
And you went straight into not even a nonsense story. Like that needs to be like a public service announcement to let people know. That's not a nonsense news story. That's like for real legit. Like these people are scamming you while you're parking.
So now it's news, nonsense,
and public service. And public service announcements.
I don't know. Well, it was something we were talking about earlier. So
Yeah.
I just thought I thought it was just another, you were talking about a scam. Here's another scam that people are using, right?
All right. So I guess
I thought I played off of that really nice bit.
No,
I
because you
thought I
haven't
did.
buried my pun, which you know how much I love puns.
Well, say it again.
No, it's
come on.
lost.
Go
It's
ahead and do
lost.
it. Go
I can
ahead.
guarantee you there will be another one in the next podcast.
So I'm being unbearable now. Is that what
You
you're saying?
are unbearable. So yeah, let's just move on. Okay, so we are at the end of our first official Reasonable Arguments News and Nonsense podcast. And I hope you guys liked it. We will be back. I guess we should have said that we are from well, we're not from Sarasota, Florida. We live in Sarasota.
We're based out of.
We are based out of Sarasota, Florida. So we are going to go out into the sunshine and enjoy this warm weather. But keep your arguments reasonable and your nonsense fun, and join us next time.
We look forward to it.
Bye.